The first question, I think, is what do you think are the three most important qualities in a teacher? Um, I think the first quality is communication. It's really important to understand what the objectives are, what the students need to learn, and how to communicate those ideas effectively. The second most important quality, or another of the three important qualities, is flexibility of thinking. Being able to, again, it kind of comes down to communication, being able to redirect or think with students who may think in a different way. And the third is probably being able to inspire students to be active participants of their learning. I think within that is a realm of creativity. So, which again links to flexible thinking, but a type of creativity that enables task creation that is engaging and enables students to think through the subject in a way that helps it to come alive and helps them to be inspired by it. Okay, your second question. What are your best experiences in teaching, and how can you tell us something about your subject which your students or you have found to be the most exciting or fascinating? I've had a lot of really good experiences teaching. I started my career in Russia, actually, where I taught art history at university and led a department, the art history, or it's called contextual studies department. And that was a fantastic experience, largely because the students that I was working with were fine art students. And so there was a huge amount of creative, multidisciplinary and multisensory exchange, as in they were used to thinking through doing. They were used to approaching problems using a design mindset. And that's something which I've tried to incorporate into my teaching outside of an art school environment. So I've tried to incorporate thinking through doing into my art history seminars that I lead at the Courtauld, for example. Or at UCL, I ask students to respond to the lecture and reading in seminars through giving them a brief that they need to quickly workshop. So, for example, you are a curator, you're working with a kipo, which is extremely fragile, and you need to work with the preservation department and the conservation department in order to display this thing which perhaps shouldn't be seen by everybody. And so, according to the context from which it comes. And so, how do you work with these ideas in that case of who has access to viewing something? How does one work with the constraints that one might have in a professional scenario, like something being fragile and it not being possible to touch it or to expose it to visible light? Anyway, so thinking through doing is something that I got from my experience teaching art history in Moscow, and it's something that I continue to work with and find it to be quite an interesting and effective, engaging pedagogical method. Although it requires, again, flexibility of thought and creativity of task design. Why did you get into teaching, and what else do you do for work? I come from a family of teachers, and I got into teaching, I guess, because that was something that I grew up around. When I moved to Russia, it was the thing that was my first job. And it's always been part of my practice, whether I'm working as a researcher, which I currently am, finishing up a PhD, or whether I am working in, so for example, I worked in education design for a museums company,